Well, hey, greetings everybody. This is Kai from the Techno Funk Boy. So, gosh, for the second time in the history of the show, we are recording a special episode. And this is, we try to do this whenever there is like a current event to address. And while there are a lot of current events in gaming in general, there's not that many in retro gaming. So it's not very often that we actually have some news to address, but we do in this case. So I've kind of let this sit for a little bit. We did a short video just for our YouTube and our Facebook page about this when the news hit, but I kind of wanted to sit back and let some more thoughts sink in and really kind of dig into what I want to say about this. So last week news came out that Emuparadise, which is a website that is dedicated to the distribution of game emulators and game ROMs, would no longer be carrying ROMs, and they stated in their statement that that the website itself would continue, that they would be shifting their focus, but at least last I looked, it was unclear as to what was going on there. This is a big deal. This is a big deal, and just for quick history for those of you who don't know, emulators are programs that emulate, some sort of console or some sort of system on your modern computer. And so it basically pretends to be an NES or an SNES or a Genesis or a C64 or whatever the case may be. It's sitting there saying, okay, yeah, this is what I'm doing. That, as I understand it, is legal. I'm not an attorney. There's a lot of opinions about the legality of all this, and so we're not really going to go into that because it really doesn't matter. It matters for Emuparadise, but it doesn't matter for our conversation today. So then there are the ROMs. The ROMs are the games themselves. They're the image of the game saved onto the computer. You can download it and play it on your emulator. And that's what's been the problem. And Nintendo in particular very often will kind of go through these sites that offer up ROMs and send out cease and desist letters, send out warnings, hey, get our stuff off of your system. And that is a lot of what people look for, is Mario games and Zelda games and stuff like that. And so when that stuff gets stripped down, there's a lot of talk about it. But in this case, Emuparadise has decided, okay, enough is enough. We're going to take these down. So the point here is not Emuparadise, although that actually was the source that I used for ROMs. They were very consistent. It was a good safe place to get ROMs if you were going to get ROMs. And so I've used them multiple times before. It was a good website, and so their closing has really been felt. As I understand it, at this point, I think a couple of websites have followed suit. I'm not sure on that. I have not kept up with the news. Again, that's not really the conversation I want to have. The conversation I want to have today is about emulation and ROMs, especially when it has to do with retro gaming, because a lot of the time, that is our option. So, there is law about this. All right. And there's a lot of opinion about this law. Again, I'm not an attorney. It seems like ROMs are illegal in all cases, if not almost all cases. And so, we're not going to get very far by pretending that that's not true. And frankly, if that's what you're bringing into this argument, that's this debate on, on whether we should have ROMs, whether we should use ROMs, whether we should use emulators is, well, the law says, then okay, you won. You've won that. And I don't really care. As we're going to go through this, I'm going to explain that statement. But for the sake of this discussion, okay, you won. You might as well turn off this podcast now, because I'm not here to talk about what is legal and illegal. I'm here to talk about what should be and should not be. And those things are different. And I know a lot of people, I used to be kind of like this. It's just kind of like, well, the law says this, and therefore that is the way it is and should be. And that's just not true. And it's historically not true. And it's every bit more interesting to me to have a conversation about what should be and what should not be. And so that's what I want to talk about here. This is what I want to discuss on this episode. And I'm going to tell you up front that I don't know what the answer is. I know what the answer is not. And it's our current system. The answer is not what our current system says. Our current system is very broken in the area of what's called IP, or intellectual property. The protections it has set up have really what started off as just protection for like somebody who creates something. And we'll say, we'll use the Techno Funk Boy here, because we create things here, and it's not simply podcasting, but that is a thing that we create. Okay. But we also do music. I'm also a writer, and I'll get more into this, but I have had stuff taken from me and offered in other forms. But the whole point of this originally was, it's like, if I create something that the government said that I should be protected in selling that thing for a while. So when it comes to inventions, that's a patent, and a patent runs for a certain amount of time. It's like, it's what's saying, hey, you created this thing, so you have a certain amount of time to sell it exclusively before everybody else can sell it. Or in the case of a copyright, okay, you wrote this novel, you should be the one making deals to sell it, and not just a publisher just snagging it. All right. And so this is a thing that happened a lot. Okay. So, the really famous case in recent history, and one that's close to my heart, is J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings. Like, when it came to America, it was totally swiped by another publisher who was not giving him money. And there was some, and I don't understand the legality of it, but there was some loophole that they got away with it, for a time. And so, a good chunk of his dealings was trying to fix that problem. But this is what copyrights are supposed to do. When the Techno Funk Boy creates, the Final Fantasy mixes, or the Quest of the Dragon Warrior EP and stuff like that, it's like, other people, the law is saying, hey, other people should not be allowed to just swipe this and sell it to, on their own, or just take it without your okay, because this is your creation. Now, I honestly, I don't know even how much I agree with that, but that's the philosophy behind it. As I said, me individually, and as the Techno Funk Boy, we have had things swiped from us and put on the market elsewhere. There was one book I wrote that the ebook was taken by somebody, and they repackaged it and even had my name on it, but they were selling it on Amazon themselves, and it got removed. And and I don't know if they sold any or what the deal there was, but this is a thing that happened. And so this is not me coming in a cavalier attitude of, well, I just, everything should be free for me and not for you, or anything like that. I've been on the other end of this. Okay, so this is not something I've taken lightly. But that being said, it's like when this whole thing started, when copywriting started, it was for an extremely limited time, and that time has expanded, and it started off like 14 years, something like that. I'm not going to go into the history of it, but it's expanded to the life of the author plus like 70 years now. And then, a lot of these copyrights just get absorbed into corporations that have different rules for themselves. And then you have different rules per industry. So, for example, I think right over there, actually, to my left, I have a couple of CDs. And the reason I have them in this room is because I just pulled MP3s off of them. They're CDs that I've had for a while. I pulled MP3s on them, and that's perfectly legal and good to do. But I have some DVDs right beside them, and I'm not allowed to do that because the copyright rules are different for different industries, even for my own personal use. It's the same thing with gaming. The industry says that I can't have a ROM of Super Mario Bros. 3. I own 3 copies of that game. I have it on NES. I have it in Super Mario All-Stars on SNES, and I have it downloaded on my Wii. But I'm not allowed to have it on a ROM. And so the rules governing this, by definition, are just come down to being very arbitrary. Because there's not a standard. There's not a standard of like the right amount of time. It's just kind of what we feel is the right amount of time to protect these things. And we didn't feel that 14 years was long enough. And so we made it longer. And we didn't feel like it would be okay to make a digital copy of a movie that I have purchased. But it feels okay to do that with music. More likely, the movie industry had better lobbyists. That's a completely different topic. But it's become very, very arbitrary. But then but what I'm talking about so far has not been what we're using ROMs for. It's like taking somebody's book and selling it on Amazon, or taking somebody's music and selling it, or something like that. And that's typically not what happens with ROM. I was listening to some people the other day making fun of a guy on eBay trying to sell an SD card full of ROMs, and how ridiculously stupid that was, because they were all downloadable. This was several weeks ago. This was before the Emuparadise thing, so that guy might actually be selling that stuff at this point. But the ROMs themselves, this is a different category. This is not I'm trying to resell something. This is I'm getting a copy for a reason. And I remember when ROMs first really started hitting the market out, so to speak, hard in the 90s. And a lot of us, I mean, look, there were cases. The first ROM I ever downloaded was Final Fantasy V. And the reason I downloaded it is because we could not get it here in America at that time. It was a Japanese only release, and it was in Japanese. I don't believe the English translation had come out yet, the fan translation. And if it had, I didn't know about it. And so I had a website with all the lines and all the spells in Japanese and what they translated to. And so I had this thing on my screen while I'm playing. Which wasn't the easiest thing to do then, because not many of us had dual monitors. But I definitely had that going. And, but a lot of us were just getting these ROMs to avoid paying for the game. I wasn't big into ROM collection at the time. Things have changed quite a bit, and that's still a thing. That's still a thing, is that you want to play a game that you don't want to pay for. But more often, a lot of people are downloading the old games, and some of them are available in different formats, but a lot of them aren't. And so sometimes we're downloading ROMs because we were just trying it out before we try to hunt this thing down. Sometimes it's that we can't find this game anywhere, and like in the case that it's just not on the open market anymore. The only market that it's on is like used game cartridges, and then sometimes it's that we already bought it, and let's face it, I'm very fortunate. My NES and SNES still work. My original SNES and NES still work, and the cartridges, as far as I can tell, all still work. Very fortunate. The Genesis I have, which was given to me by a friend, not so fortunate. It is dead. It's still, I say it's dead. It still can play some of the carts, but not many of them. And a lot of those carts are dead. I don't know if it's a system of the cartridges themselves, and hopefully I'm going to get it looked at. But sometimes it's just a case of, hey, at some point my NES is going to go out. It's going to die. And that's going to be the case for all of us. These things are becoming more and more rare as time goes on. And sometimes it's just that I'd really like to play Contra again. I'd really like to play whatever again. I was looking at, I used to have a C64. We bought a lot of games on C64, and some of them I really loved. I was looking at a ROM for Heart of Africa, which was this really kind of cool, really early open world adventure. If you can, believe open world for Commodore 64, but it's true. It was really kind of quirky and cool game that I haven't played in forever. We bought that game, and I'm getting the ROM because I'd like to play it again, and I can't play it. I don't have a C64. I could get that C64 Mini that came out, but Heart of Africa is not on it. And so these are things that I would like to play again, and these are things that I have bought. So, what other options do we have? Okay, so I'm going to use an example for us. At the Retro Zoo Super Show, I'm just being frank, we cannot do this show without ROMs. So for people who are watching this episode on YouTube or on our Facebook group or wherever, this is one of the episodes that we are videotaping. So if you want to check that out, that's cool. You can see behind me are all of the SNES games I have, except I think 2, and 2 of them are on loan to a friend. But that's maybe 3 or 4 are missing from that. But it's not that big of a shelf. I did not have a ton of cash to drop on SNES games, and so what if, as a retro game podcaster, I want to talk about a game that's not one of those. And I want to talk about the gameplay, and I want to talk about how it feels and what your goals are and that sort of thing. Is I can't do that without tracking down the card itself. Now, we did 2 games back to back a few episodes ago. Both NES games, Spider-Man Rise of the Sinister Six and Jurassic Park. Both of these games I played on as ROMs. And they're not terribly expensive games. I could get a copy of each one for about $10. But frankly, we don't make any money on this podcast. We do it because we really like it, but we don't make any money. This is, financially, this whole project is a loss at this point, But we could go out and buy those games, and they're not ridiculously expensive. Probably $10 each, $12 each would get it to us. $15 if we include shipping. But that limits me to reviewing games like Spider-Man and Jurassic Park, which were not good games. That completely prevents me from reviewing a game like that we have plans to review in the near future. Little Samson I became really fascinated with that game watching it on Twitch, and I played a little bit of it on ROM. It's a fantastic game. It's a great game, and I want to review it on the show, and I cannot without the ROM because it's just too expensive of a game. It's just super expensive. It's one of the really rare ones, and so if you're up on NES cart prices, it's high, and I can't afford it. And so that's going to make us only review games that I have already, or that just are terrible and are cheap. And we don't want that. That's not our goal. But even if that were the case, even if I ran out and bought those games, I'm buying them used. The developer is not making any money off that transaction. None. That's kind of the nature of buying used things, is the developers already made their money. These games are never going to be re-released. Never. Spider-Man and Jurassic Park, those licenses have expired. They would have to, the publisher, and who knows who owns these games by now, but the publisher would have to re-buy those licenses. And good night, can you imagine what a Spider-Man license costs these days? To re-release a bad game on an old system that no one has, to maybe release it on the Switch or Wii U markets. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. There's no money in it for the developers anymore. So I can buy it used. The devs are getting no money. The publisher's getting no money. Distributors are getting no money. I can wait till it's re-released. Never going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And or I can do the ROM. Now, in that case, why are we saying that buying it used has the moral high ground over downloading the ROM? And the only answer is because of the law. All right? Now, that's fine. I mean, look, following the law is going to keep you out of jail, and I'm generally in favor of keeping out of jail. Okay? And so this is not this is not me saying flaunt the law at all. I would never advise that. But like I said earlier, we are talking about what should be here and not what the law is currently. We know what the law is currently. And so why are we saying that buying it used has the moral high ground over getting a ROM? And it's simply because of the law. And I'm going to be frank here. The law does not create morality. It doesn't. At best, it should be trying to guide us in the proper direction of good morality. But just because the government says something is wrong doesn't make it wrong. Just because the government says something is right doesn't make it right. So what we do when we decide, okay, let me buy it used rather than downloading the ROM is maybe, okay, I mean, and of course, maybe when we were a collector, and I would like to have a cart over the ROM if that's the choice, all things else being equal, that's fine. And there's collectors out there who definitely want it. We're just talking about, wanting to play the game. The reason we would pick the used cart sale over the ROM is just to paint within the lines. It's just because the government says that's what we should be doing. And that's what the government is saying that we should be doing right now. And as somebody who does value freedom, as somebody who does value not crossing the law, because that's not a game that I'm going to win, that's how we should proceed. And so, as much as I say that I can't do this show without ROMs, and that's true. I don't play ROMs very often. I try to stick to the carts that I have. Sometimes I do stream off of ROMs because it looks prettier, but they still are off of carts that I have. And I know that's probably not a distinction that's worth having. And so, my advice to stay, to color within the lines. I'm not doing that great of a job at it, but the point of it is that we need to look at this with at least more subtlety than all ROMs are wrong in all cases. I read, and forgive me. I'm trying to find the article. I'll try to throw it in the show notes page, but I read an article today and I cannot remember who wrote it. It's going to come to me later. Who was pointing out that, at some point in the near future, all of the really old movies, the original movies from the first couple of decades of film are going to go into public domain. They're going to come out of copyright. And so theoretically that means that we should start, at that date, we should start being able to download these movies, except we can't because a lot of them are gone. I mean, there's no copies of them anymore. They're just gone. Over the years, they just, no one kept it. And that is in the short history of video games, we have seen that become a very, very, very valued, realistic concern. Most of the original games that came out, the stuff that was put on floppy disk in a plastic bag and mailed or bought in just horrible plastic bags with photocopied instructions. Most of those games are gone. Stuff that was built for the original computers as little projects are gone. And you think that this problem would be solved by the time we get into the 80s and 90s, but they're not, because we still have carts of games like Jurassic Park, of like Little Samson. But as these carts start dying, as these carts start going missing over time, we're going to be needing the backup copies, the ROMs, to make sure that these games are just lost to time. And if this is not allowed, in any case at all, that presents us a problem. So, I told you earlier, I don't know the solution. I don't. I know our system is broken, and I think we need to be talking about not in terms of, well, is this legal and is this not legal? I think we need to start having a real conversation about what should be legal and what should not be legal. And when we have so many games that have just gone, I mean, just not supported, not published, not available in anything except a used market. And we're still, just wagging our finger going, well, that's not legal to download that. Okay. Where can I buy it? You can't. Oh, well, okay. So that's a problem. I think as long as we're having that conversation, we're not going to get anywhere in this. I think one good thing that's happened in the Emuparadise thing is that the conversation is shifting a little bit into what is the solution. In the meantime, if we are going to get anywhere toward a solution, then we need to support the publishers that are keeping their retro games alive. And so, if I'm going to use the example of Chrono Trigger because it's the most recent thing that jumps to mind at least. Square released a Chrono Trigger on Steam. It didn't. Yeah, okay. It had some bad reviews up front. My understanding is there's been several patches that have fixed most of them, and it's playing and feeling much more like the original. If that's something that you weren't able to snag early on, and it's something that you want to play, then consider supporting that. Whenever a publisher offers up something and says, "Hey, we heard the retro people like this. Would you pay for this game?" Then we should be supporting that. If we're not, as much as we pretend like we are gaming historians that are just protecting it for future generations, and most of us are not, me included, most of us are not. But if we're not doing at least that, then it's really hard for us to pretend like, we are not just outright swiping these games from publishers who are trying to make money off of them. And so I think that's our first step forward, is that when we can, we let the publishers know that we want to see more of this stuff. But in the same breath, demand that if the publisher's not interested, we still are. Can we make this an issue? Can we change the rules? Can we do something about this? And so, I'm very sad to see Emuparadise go. I didn't have a ton of ROMs on my computer. I think besides the two I played, I think I had Dragon Warrior because you need it, to do the randomizer. And I had just snagged, I want to get back into Final Fantasy V. I did buy that game on the PlayStation version. And it reviewed poorly because of load times. And so I was thinking about streaming it, and I was thinking about just getting the fan translation to stream it because it would just be more enjoyable for everybody. And it was a game that I had paid for. And so, these are the ROMs that I had. It wasn't like the whole of my gaming experience or even a tiny part, but I'm still feeling it because I think that, legal or not, emulators and ROMs are an important part of retro gaming. And I think, I think that we need to actively work toward making the rules so that this sort of thing remains an option while we continue to support publishers who still show love toward their old properties. And so, that's as close to an answer as I have. I don't have the answers. I don't have the magic formula on, that people should own their own music for this many years or not at all or forever. I don't know. I don't know. But it is something that we need to, I think as a society, it'd be very good for us to have further conversations on. So with that, I am going to let you go. We're going to have our normal episode this week, but I did want to get that out and kind of help start the conversation, I guess, a little bit. So really appreciate you tuning in, and we will see you later.